Hi, everyone. So it's almost time to get the show on the road. So happy to be hosting this first conversation that I'm having with our customers. So let me start with the introductions. My name is Celeste Mulder, and I am the Learning Officer here at IoT.nxt, and I'll be hosting this series of customer conversations that we'll be having around IoT and its impact on various sectors. So today's sector in the spotlight is the heavy industry sector. And here to lead the conversation is our resident tech expert and senior solutions architect, Xander Coetzee. Give us a wave there, Xander. Awesome. And joining Xander in conversation is also our long-time customer, Alex Fenn, to share his experience and learnings with us. Give us a wave there, Alex. Well done. And if you didn't already know, Alex is a professionally registered mechanical engineer and has managed various portfolios over the last 9 years with Sibanye Stillwater. And he currently heads up the technology and innovation function for the group, which is responsible for the broader strategy structures around technology adoption and organizational innovation. So we are super excited to have you here with us today, Alex. Thank you so much. Let's quickly look at our agenda for today. We will start off with market trend overview with Xander. We will then bring in Alex to join Xander and discuss the customer journey, the growing partnership thus far, and the way we're looking into the future. After that, Xander will explain, for those of you tuning in for the first time, the IoT.nxt technology stack from the bottom up. And then we'll be closing off by answering some questions. So please do submit your questions in our Q&A chat box. Any questions that we do not get to during the session, we will give it the proper attention it deserves hereafter, and we'll get in touch with you as soon as possible. And as always, your feedback is important to us. So please take 5 minutes at the end of your session today to share your thoughts in a quick survey. And now, without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Xander for those market insights.
Thanks, Celeste. All right. So what's the saying that 70% of all statistics are made up on the spot? So I don't specifically want to read you the statistics about IoT in the market and the market globally. But what I will say is that I think that it's clear that industrial IoT has the potential to improve the production and business processes by enabling the extraction of valuable information from disparate edge and system components, especially within the mining industry. With competition intensifying, mining houses need to seek new approaches on making sites more efficient, improving safety, and gaining a competitive edge on their industry rivals. A study conducted by Inmarsat found that 65% of mining organizations globally have deployed at least one IoT-enabled project across their sites, only one. So I think my question to you as a forum is, that being said, where are you in that 65%, and how many IoT projects have you looked into? Ask that question to yourself with regards to your business, especially looking at wastage, whether that be utilities or poor efficiencies. Benchmark yourself in terms of where you are in terms of early adoption and getting into this trend, similar to what Alex and them did. What I see a lot when engaging with clients, bringing on IoT technologies into their businesses is a recurrence of 3 myths. The one myth is that technology will replace humans. We see this very, very often in the South African context. I think our statement to that is that it won't replace, it will improve current roles as well as establish new roles. Number 2 would be that today's technology is too expensive and that is still at its inception. I don't agree with that, and IoT.nxt doesn't agree with that. with cloud native applications and hardware vendor partnerships, along with co-creation efforts with our clients, we build solutions that make an impact. It comes down to what you put in is what you get out. So you invest in cheap technology, you'll get cheap returns. And I think that's where there's a common misconception. Then lastly is that IoT solutions can't integrate with existing systems or require entirely new systems. And I think that's where IoT.nxt is very well established with our no rip and replace policy. We take that to heart, and that is what we started our business with. So from an industrials perspective, the 4 focus industry challenges for us as a business is the following. Digitalization, to enable lower costs and leverage legacy equipment. The second would be productivity, to increase productivity across the entire value chain, okay? To focus this business or your business to effectively utilize your information that you've got caught up in all your different assets or systems that aren't being effectively utilized. Operational excellence via the digitalization process. Improving cost per output, especially from an industrial perspective. The major driver for IoT and for us is to make sure that you get an ROI, that you see benefit from implementing our technology. And then last, but most certainly not least, is safety. Or we've got a big focus in improving safety initiatives via the use of technology. Ensuring the safety via connected workers is a self-driven exercise. So from an industry perspective, that's where IoT.nxt focuses. And that being said, we will be jumping into our interview discussion with Alex and what we've developed and installed for them. So yeah, so I think to start it off, the project with Alex and team was quite a simple project, at least we initially thought. We integrated into a small fleet of machines in a small section where we integrated across various different types of machines, 3 machines to be specific, bolters, drill rigs, and LHDs. For those of you who don't know what that is from a mining context, happy to take that offline. These are the machines that are effectively responsible to drive the output of the mine. So yeah, so Alex, thank you for joining us and always being willing to jump into these things with us. So maybe you can just start us off with how IoT.nxt and Sibanye met.
Sure, Xander, thanks very much, and I guess good afternoon to everybody. It was always a pleasure joining on these calls. In terms of how we met, with Sibanye Stillwater, I guess we recognized the value of digital technologies quite early on, but we really wanted to test our thinking and understand, what use cases would be most relevant in our organization. So early sort of 2018, we identified a use case, that being overall equipment effectiveness in one of our trackless mechanized mining operations. And we identified a bunch of metrics that we wanted to pull out digitally so that we could track and intervene on the productivity of that operation more effectively. Post that, we sort of started on quite a significant market research program where we looked at all the different types of technologies that would support those measurements or those metrics. And very early on, we saw that there was a massive issue in the sense that it was always separate OEMs or separate service providers, different protocols underlying each technology. And we foresaw that the integration required on the back end of this initiative was going to be more substantial than the installation of the sensors or the equipment required to extract that data. So we then tried another strategy where we addressed specific technology providers. It was a lot more efficient in that respect. Got a lot more traction there, but still foresaw the same integration issues on the back end. So we took a step back and thought, how do we deal with the integration issue first and then make sure that whatever we do implement is scalable across our organization? Sibanye Stillwater has grown through an acquisitive growth strategy. So by virtue of that, we've inherited a lot of legacy systems. And what we saw from that was anything we applied to a certain type of equipment might not be applicable on other equipment and other operations because we have inherited all of those different systems. So whatever we do implement needs to be scalable in that respect. which is why, again, we pivoted the strategy and we started looking at companies that dealt with integration on the back end and extraction of data effectively. And we sort of bumped into you guys, had a long conversation around what was possible, at least what we thought was possible. And then obviously we signed up for that solution and then built everything underneath it into that program, which was actually a lot more easy than we thought it was going to be post our initial market research exercise.
Thanks, Alex. And from the project perspective, how would you say that we scoped this project? How do you think we, if we had to describe it to the audience, how did we start this initiative off, right?
I think it started off, Xander, as a bit of a contact sport.
Small dark rooms.
Yeah. We had a very well established idea of what we wanted to achieve, whereas IoT.nxt had a much broader perspective on what was actually possible. Very early on, we sort of noted exactly what we wanted. There was some input from your side, but realized very early on again that the possibilities on this type of technology are actually far broader than we originally expected. So again, repositioning ourselves to take on learnings from IoT.nxt, I guess, intellectual property, to understand beyond what we can currently achieve, what could we leverage this technology to do over and above that. So I guess we instituted a bit of agility there. We had to take a step back and understand that we are, miners by nature. We are very good at what we do because we're very good at what we do. We're not necessarily proficient in the digital space, and actually take what you guys are very good at doing and build it into our understanding of digital. So I think it started off being quite prescriptive from our side, but then evolved to be extremely co-creational and also very agile. So no limitations in terms of the scope, provided it was within a very broad spectrum of requirements. But really taking a lot of your understanding of what's possible in other industries and applying it to our own.
Yeah, I think that's the power that I'd like to get out of the question is one is the co-creation effort, right? When we build these solutions, we have got propositions which we go to market with. We came to you with an open proposition in terms of the smart mine, but we actually built the solution together. You had very well-defined outcomes that you would like to have achieved, and we kind of just figured out the road along the way, right? We built the road on the way there. With that, did you have a good idea of the potential of implementing IoT technology in your mining environment based on what you just told us?
I think within the scope of the original intent. So again, we structure solutions around objectives as opposed to the other way around, which I think has been a common problem in mining. Historically, a lot of people bringing solutions that we then try fit to problems. We try to mitigate against that as much as possible. So I think the original use case, we understood the potential, we understand our operations, and we understand our limitations. So within the original scope, we understood what was broadly possible. I think we're achieving it, or understanding what is achievable to date. I think what we didn't understand was how important it is to take a systemic view of this type of technology, the value in digital being the ability to integrate from end to end, and also the ability to do that relatively easily. So we did a lot of hard work up front. Xander, you'll remember, again, another contact sport and doing the integration. But once we'd achieved it, tacking on additional endpoints and information sources was relatively easy. So scalability beyond the use case is immense. I think we've got a new understanding of what's possible. Again, within the scope, we were aware, but in terms of our future understanding and our future vision for this type of technology, we have a much broader expectation of what's possible and a much broader understanding of who we could lean on to do that. And what, again, you don't want to throw hundreds of millions of dollars at a solution if it's only going to solve 20% of the problem. Rather go the other way around from a Pareto perspective, leveraging your intellectual capacity to identify what other industries have done is also very valuable. So we did have a good understanding of what's achievable in that space. We didn't understand quite what's achievable in the broader spectrum.
Overall in the value chain. Yeah. And I think we taking the bottom-up approach in building the solution together, focusing on the vital assets right at the face when we consider your industry. I think that was, where it started. And when we started unpacking that, we really saw the value that we could add along the chain of moving from the face upwards. So would you then agree that having visibility will enable you to manage machines, or just manage in general, more effectively?
Definitely. I think, just by virtue of not having the information at that sort of level, or the granular level that we could attain out of the POC that we did with you guys, we being able to identify where in your operation, and our operations are substantial, Batapele being enormous in the context of underground tabular mechanized mining. To manage absolutely everything at the same time is extremely difficult, but to be able to zero in on specific metrics that aren't going according to plan on a daily basis is really going to help us focus management's efforts in terms of interventions. We can also reconcile over time, as opposed to just looking back over a month at what happened. We can start intervening in sections that might not be delivering up to plan for any reason. And I think historically it's always been a problem in underground mines. It's hard to tell what's going on beyond a certain point. We're essentially, for big periods of the day, somewhat invisible. So it definitely help us understand, why things are happening at the times that they're happening, and intervene more proactively to enable our employees to get the job done. If it's something as simple as delivering oil to a machine or getting some maintenance performed rapidly within the shift, whereas previously it was generally done after the fact. So absolutely, it will enhance our ability to manage our operations.
Yeah, and I think, visibility enables management, and management enables control. And that's what you're talking about in terms of that short interval control, being proactive, moving the mining out of the reactive space.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So on the back of this whole discussion and the mention of the dark rooms and the contact sports sessions, Xander, did the solution change at all from the initial site inspection and the initial conversations and plans?
Like I said, we had very specific objectives, and the goal of this is, by the co-creation effort, is to meet those objectives. It's not like following a plan to the T. It's we've got a problem and we need to solve the problem. So we're not just putting down a product and shaking hands and stepping away. And I think so from that perspective, I would say from initial discussions to where we ended up, definitely there was some change, but change for the better.
Awesome. And Alex, tell me, how long did it take to deploy this solution? When did you, how long did you, before you started seeing results?
It's I guess, quite a complex question. I just noted Steve's comment that I'm coming across quite soft, so I'm yelling a bit. Forgive me for that. But it's from our side, conventional project execution in the mining context is quite difficult. So, the pre-work is always on our back to get done. There's a lot of legal requirements to abide by, which we need to make sure we've covered, and risk especially, that we need to make sure that we don't introduce into the business. So beyond that, though, extremely rapid. I think from the date at which we were able to deliver and implement, it took between, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks to actually start seeing information coming out from underground. So in terms of delivery on IoT.nxt side, extremely rapid. And yeah, I think it was, if they hadn't been sort of limited by the context of our operations from a legal perspective, it would have been done probably quite a lot quicker. So really, the critical path in terms of this project had nothing to do with IoT.nxt. I think they would have done it in 2 weeks if they could have, but it was more on our side. So about 4 to 6, but it shouldn't be a reflection on your ability to deliver.
And I also think to adjust, or just to add to what you're saying, Alex, is there was, and maybe just something that I picked up, there was a bit of skepticism from the site itself in terms of us installing things on machines impacting production. And to mitigate that, we obviously, we worked on weekends, we worked on when the machines were in real, like, kind of a downtime situation where they weren't needed, or when they were swung between sections. And that's kind of what we leveraged so to be able to not impact the environment.
Okay. So my last question is a question posed to you both. So, they say hindsight is a perfect science. So is there anything, Xander and Alex, that you would say going forward that, you would have done differently? You want to start, Xander or Alex? Is it a tough
Yeah,
question?
well, I think from my side or from an IoT.nxt perspective, what I would do differently is I think a little bit more upfront work. I think where we are right now is, it was a very young project. It was still at the very young stages of IoT.nxt. It's like nearly 3 years ago when we started this journey. We've learned a lot. So implementing the lessons learned will definitely improve. I think even it will improve our delivery as well as our scopes. We've kind of tapped into systems and things that we didn't think of before, looking at the mining value chain. So our scope in terms of the industrial sector has definitely grown. So when we go out to the market with these propositions, we're a lot broader now, which is good for us because people can slice and dice that broad piece of bread and utilize the sections that are applicable to them. We by no means want to go out and just say, we can offer everything, but we can say that we are able to do everything and you can match that to your environment. So filling in your gaps. So I guess that's the only thing that I would take from that.
And Alex?
Yeah, I'd have to second that opinion. I wish we'd had a better understanding of what was possible upfront. So we, having seen what is plausible, we limited the original project to the section in question on the basis that we thought that was all that is achievable. And again, all of the work, the majority of the work, I'd say 80% of it from a complexity perspective has been dealt with, which means scaling it beyond that use case is relatively easy. The infrastructure is there, the connections are there, the relationship is there. If I'd known that were the case at the beginning, I would have looked at possibly a much broader segment of the value chain, possibly all the way up to the end of that operation. But as you say, hindsight's 2020. So I think just having understood what's possible, we probably would have scoped it a lot larger and been a little bit more aggressive with our objectives. But also to disagree with Xander is to say do less upfront work, because if you do limit yourself in that respect, you might miss out on the really interesting stuff that comes out. So being a bit fluid in this project was actually quite constructive for us. Whereas if we were super sort of aspirational, we might have also just missed slight things on the basis that it was already too big. So combination of both, think bigger, and also be a lot more agile, a lot more fluid, and a lot more acceptable of the change. So be open to scope changes, be open to amendments in the objectives, which we are conventionally not really that open to at all, because at the end of the day, it does add value in the space in particular.
Okay, so then there's one last question there for Alex from Mr. Bester. He's asking which operational metrics were impacted by this deployment and what is or was the benefit or the improvement?
So we got quite far along the line. Unfortunately, the advent of COVID has had a massive impact on the project. So in terms of benefits, we're still early days in understanding what the potential is, but some of the areas where we believe we can achieve significant benefit is in sort of asset maintenance, so understanding how long our equipment is actually operating and whether or not we can improve on those maintenance cycles to lessen the impact on production. The other thing we noticed was quite a lot of variability in the production cycle in terms of start times and execution duration, which gives us the opinion that it's definitely not optimized to the extent that it can be. And then also in terms of understanding where your equipment is so that you can make sure you intervene if there's any issues. We see significant upside in that. So upfront, it's quite difficult to say anything or commit to any numbers now, but there is significant potential in the sort of double-digit percentage figures across each one of those particular metrics, all the way from mean time between failure and the implications on maintenance through to productivity. And then also, I think we've yet to understand the full benefit from a safety perspective, but there's definitely something there that we've recognized in the implementation of this particular system.
Awesome. Thank you.
That leaves nothing for me to add. Except
you can show us the pretty stuff.
So I think just to give everybody some perspective of what this looks like from a control room perspective. And I don't want to limit it to a control room perspective because Internet of Things breaks that barrier. You know, Alex and team could look at their machines sitting at home on the porch on a weekend by logging into the PC and seeing what their machines are doing underground. That's something that's, I would say, unheard of. And what those look like is what you're seeing on the screen, right? We implement this concept of a digital twin of a machine where we're bringing a 2D image or a 3D image to life with data. And that's what we did. That's what we implemented with Alex. So he spoke a little bit about the outcomes and the KPIs, but I mean, ultimately it comes down to health metrics and performance metrics across the various machines. On the screen, you're seeing the LHD machine, which its primary function is to move tons, right? So you know, from a production perspective, that's what you want to look at. But then obviously also from a health perspective, you want to get the data from how this machine is performing. Even this could go as far as to say gamified performance in terms of operator in seat. The next one is a drill rig. And again, similar concept. I would like to highlight the differences here between this machine and an LHD without getting too much into the technicalities too much, but the LHDs are a little bit more advanced machines, not as legacy. They've got CAN bus systems, which are kind of easy to tap into and to read. And I say easy because we do it as a business. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But the drill rigs and the bolters are your more electro-hydraulic machinery. So we actually read ones and zeros from these machines and give you a ton of data, enable you to see that. And that's the power of utilizing the legacy equipment. And that's the power of what we do. So this is the drill rig, which you can see there. And then the last screen is the bolter or support rig, similar concept again, just turning its drilling axis from horizontal to vertical. I suppose Alex would have more on that. But getting OEE on these and seeing how these machines perform, you know, when you start a shift in the morning, you have a plan, and then by 2 o'clock, you'd like to review that plan. Generally, that happens always post shift. Now you do it in shift. So I guess this is what we delivered. Alex, anything that you'd like to add?
I think just over and above the implication of this at a granular level, what we will start doing, and what we've started to see on other operations with other technologies, is the ability to benchmark from one section to another, compare whether or not they are contextually the same. If there's any sort of specificity around that operation that would cause, you know, a certain activity to go over a time, but then take the really efficient stuff, understand what's making it efficient, and teach the rest of the business to do that as well. So we've done it on a bunch of other assets within the group, but it enables us to understand behaviorally who's very good at what they do and who isn't, which from an information perspective is really, really interesting. I mean, a lot of mining is very technical. It's easy to engineer things out and design things to be more efficient, but a lot of people actually neglect the impact of driver capability and driver behavior within the process. So being able to identify, you know, what's going right, more importantly than what's going wrong, and then coach the people that are not necessarily as effective as other people, is an extremely, extremely beneficial added benefit of the technology, which we're only beginning to explore in this type of mining environment, but we have seen, you know, significant results in other areas, specifically in terms of safety.
Any other questions, Celeste, that you want to take from the audience?
Yes, I have a question from Jamie. How did connectivity impact project performance?
I'll leave that one to you, Alex.
It's a very, very critical aspect of the entire system. So obviously you're unable to bring this data out without an effective medium, which was also quite a significant challenge. Specifically in an operation where you blow up your office on a daily basis, and there's a lot of concussion in there. So, you know, conventional wireless infrastructure is relatively ineffective in the areas in which we wanted to have full coverage. So we investigated a different technology, which is far more deployable, far more maintainable, and just easier in every respect, and as effective, I'd say, as fiber to cover the data. But essentially, without the infrastructure, you wouldn't be able to get any of this information. So the conduit is always extremely important. What you elect to go with is, I guess, specific to the problem you're trying to solve, but that was a very critical component. So you can't do any of this without a significant amount of coverage from an infrastructure and a data infrastructure perspective.
Okay, we have another question from Adi. What are the quality parameters defined by you for IoT in the area of performance and security, and how do you maintain it?
I guess from a commercial perspective, we want significant uptime. We want 99% plus. We don't ever want the system to be the determining factor in our ability to deliver. So it's quite stringent from that perspective. We want the data integrity to be good. So we don't want any lost packet type things, even though, we do buffer a lot of information when those machines are out of range, but making sure that we get quality data out is something that we're focused on. And then from a security perspective, without disclosing too much, we have a very, very rigorous, I guess, protocol in terms of both our OT and IT networks, which we IoT.nxt is contractually obliged to comply with. On the last, it's very easy to manage. I think that's a standard commercial relationship between any sort of digital partner or IT partner. In terms of the others, we are still getting a good understanding of a suitable, or rather an applicable metric to apply to some of those things. So if there are issues in achieving an extremely high uptime, but we don't necessarily need it, we might be able to relax some of those. We still don't understand exactly what that is. But then also, and I guess on the data integrity side, the same applies. So we don't want to be overly onerous if the technology is not capable of delivering it. We're still getting to grips with what exactly we require and how we require it. But to date, we haven't seen anything that we can't, or anything that we don't want to see. So I guess it's one of those things that's relatively new from our perspective. So to understand how to keep people accountable is very difficult, but we're learning that as we go along. But to date, we haven't had a reason to call the lawyers.
Now, Alex, another question from Rudy, since you mentioned the word data a lot. He would like to know, how is the data collected from underground, as traditionally data communications underground is a challenge?
Yeah, so we actually had to install a wireless network underground. We at Batsapele have fiber infrastructure to the tip, which means you've got no more than 300 meters from an operating face, which is fairly easy to do. But if you consider a board and pillar layout with multiple faces, and the fact that you're in a narrow environment where sort of wireless signal propagation or permeation is quite difficult, we had to do a lot of work around establishing that network also to be resilient. But we do have full data coverage within the section in which we tested this technology, so we had to consider that. It is I think the comment is quite apt across industry, and specifically in conventional mines. So a lot of the other operations we own are nowhere near the type of data density, if I can put it that way, than Batsapele is. So it is a consideration in the long term, because those networks industrially and in the context of mining are extremely difficult and expensive to install and maintain. But we do have sort of full coverage in the section that we're testing.
I think, is that all the questions that we're going to take for now, Celeste?
That's all the questions for now, yes.
All right. I guess then, to close off the discussion with you, Alex, how would you say that this journey with me and IoT has informed your vision of the future in utilizing IoT technologies?
I think it's opened up a lot of optionality for us in terms of both our understanding, but where we can look for solutions. Digital for us has always been a very, and I think for everyone really, a very abstract concept with very difficult things to think through and solve, which often ends up in us limiting our perspective on what's achievable. So there's there's a bit of augmentation there in the sense that we are no longer afraid of the integration issue because we understand that there are companies that are proficient in that space. So the whole conversation around legacy assets and legacy equipment and technologies is now no longer a conversation, if I could put it that way. So that's a huge enabler for us, considering the amounts of legacy systems we're trying to deal with. And I think also just to participate in an ecosystem effectively. So our core business is mining, your core business is, I don't really understand it to its fullest extent, but you know,
it's doing stuff and connecting things. Yeah.
So to lean more on experts in respective fields more effectively, and understand that we are limited in terms of our understanding, and that the knowledge is out there and that the capability is out there if you choose to go with the right people or the right partners.
Cool. So power of the partnership, the ecosystem of partners, I guess is my takeaway from that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that comes to the end of our discussion, Alex. So from my side, I'd like to thank you, and it's nice to see you again. When all of this is over, we'll be continuing our discussions on site with gumboots and hard hats. Thanks, Celeste. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. You're off the hook. It's thank you so much for joining us. Xander, it is now over to you to discuss and explain for those of the people who's tuning in for the first time, our IoT.nxt technology stack from the bottom up.
All right. Thanks, Celeste. I think if we could just go back to the presentation there. Yeah, so just before we moved on to the entire stack, I think I wanted to repeat a little bit about what we said in terms of the partnership ecosystem and the value that we abstract from it. By no means is IoT.nxt the be all and end all to IoT technologies, but I think we're getting a lot better at what we do with our partners. So just an idea, and I think some of you in the audience might have seen these videos posted about a partnership with us and a local South African OEM about doing exactly the same thing as what we did with Sibanye, right? So leveraging off of that. And I think the most important thing to highlight here is the network connectivity. So our majority ownership with Vodacom South Africa has enabled us to do a lot more and now expand our reach into the markets when we look at IoT, because IoT fundamentally doesn't work with a backbone, without a backbone. And that really sets us apart in the market. And then obviously the early adoption of 5G technologies, and that's our drive for the future. But more of that, I guess, in other discussions. Let me run through our stack at a high level. If you've never seen it, then I will quickly talk you through this. It's that common saying of I'm telling you what I'm going to say, I'm then saying what I'm going to say, and then I'll tell you what I said. Right. So from an IoT.nxt perspective, we really value the breaking down of barriers between verticals. Data enablement should never be siloed in our mind, and that's one of the powerful mottos that we've got in the business. So I think, just to reiterate what we've been saying in the interview with Alex, that our horizontal approach and being agnostic to hardware devices, OEM equipment, systems, verticals, it really brings this picture to light. Everybody talks about AI and predictive and MI and blockchain, but none of that happens without data enablement. And how to get data enablement is where the power sits for us. And it's breaking down the barriers to enable businesses to get that data. So, this is applicable vastly beyond the industrial perspective. This is across the board. And just to reiterate my statement, I'd like to just, ask a simple question, maybe on the next slide. I think, how often in your businesses do you see the following, if you look at your enterprise architecture or your architecture overall, how often do you see this image where you've got system A, system B, system C, system D, all talking to separate cloud environments, all not wanting to, talk to each other massive integration requirements. The term that I would despise is middleware, for these things to integrate with each other. And this is something common across all industries. And what's the power of that our product suite brings in the name of Raptor, VRaptor, and Commander, is the following. We break down those barriers because we don't look at those labels. We're only interested in enabling you with the data that you've got, and utilizing the systems that you have. We by no means want to implement another system, that old story about, another thing to log into. That's not what we want to do. You don't even need to log into it. It's there to abstract, collate, normalize, and provide you with data to drive your business into the future. And that's the next image. So with that, I think from a high level perspective, our stack is explained quite easily. We've got a product suite of 3 products, which hope everybody's familiar with, or if not, it would be the Raptor from the edge perspective. Our Raptor is our gateway software that we run natively on gateways. We don't have a preferred vendor. It runs on Ubuntu core, so pretty much anything that can run that will be able to run Raptor. You can run them on your PCs at home. Our secondary gateway, which is our thick edge component, is the VRaptor. The VRaptor is the big brother to the Raptor and the little brother to Commander. It's the entryway into the cloud, and this is where our security sets us apart in our management and our chain of trust. And VRaptor enables us to do that, as well as that extra layer of buffering of information so that we don't have any loss of data in the event of loss of connectivities or things going down. And then obviously the master piece of the puzzle is Commander. And Commander is what I call a ecosystem of applications. In there, it natively comes with 2 or 3 applications off the bat, but that is not limited. That is part of the core product. The nice thing about Commander is its ability to adapt and to add on additional applications based on a specific solution to clients. We've got teams all over the world working on this, building on this, adding to it, and we're extremely agile as a business in terms of turning around new functionalities and new features. So I hope that has given you a nice overview of our product stack.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Xander. We've got some time now to take some questions from the audience. The first one I would like to focus on is, what one application contributed the most operational cost savings?
This is specific to the Sibanye case. So, I mean, what one application? Are we talking about an actual app, or are we talking about an application of something? That's from Dave. But what I would say to that is the one application would be Raptor and Commander. Those would be the applications that helped us realize the operational savings. It enabled us to see the information on the machines. It enabled us to abstract that in real time and send it from underground into Commander and utilize that information to drive cost savings.
Okay, great. And then Yaku also had a question with regards to data, and you mentioned earlier about how we enable the end user with so much data, and Yaku just wanted to confirm, could the data assist you during an accident investigation by analyzing the data and combining that with your traditional methods?
Most certainly, right. So when we started this off, we abstracted the rawest pieces of information from the machine as we could get, and then started collating those into something valuable. So from a health and performance perspective of the machine, we can pretty much almost read everything. So if you're looking at an evidence bag and going back into the machine data to see where something went wrong, that is most certainly applicable. And like Alex mentions, we really scratched the surface of what we could do with this data. Feeding the data up from this granular level has got endless opportunities that we could have a discussion about for days. So definitely, it can definitely.
And then we have a question from Herman. who obviously wants to ask the most important question. How long did it or will it take to get back the return on investment?
Yeah, so I think a complex question and not something that, we answer off the bat in that sense. But the reality here is that if your objectives are well defined and we integrate and solve the problem rather than remedy past the problem, we remedy what do we call it, consequences or effects of the problem, then your return on investment is really easily calculated. If we look at a mining perspective, if we reduce the downtime of a machine from 8 hours to 2 hours, that's quite a bit of simple math that can be done there. If the machine is supposed to move X tons per hour, we've saved 6 hours. So I mean, just by adding the data, enabling you with the information of your machines or your assets or your systems, there's an immediate benefit. And then there is the benefit, if we look at an 80-20 rule where we need to go the extra mile to get you that up. But giving you that information already gives you the proactiveness to see what's happening in your environment. And I think just from that, the return on investment is very simple arithmetic.
Awesome. I just wanted to also ask the attendees, please, to focus their attention. There's a poll that we would like you to complete, just a short survey. If you could quickly just give us your feedback in terms of that. While you're busy with that, we have another question from Mr. Bester. You speak about a partner ecosystem. What is the evaluation criteria for becoming a partner?
Yeah, very good question. And I think something that beckons a bit of a deeper discussion. Obviously, at a high level, it needs to be mutually beneficial to both parties. It's a natural marry that we seek in terms of partners. If we look at installation partners or SIs or network connectivity, or whatever the case may be, it needs to be a natural marry to our environment. Like I said, we are good at doing what we do. We don't necessarily want to take on what someone else is good at. So I think from a high level perspective, that's our criteria. Obviously, if we look at the legal, there's a lot of underlying things that we need to go through. But if I had to take on a partner, that's the thing. If you help me do what I do better and I help you do what you do better, then it makes sense.
Yeah, it's their business, only better or only smarter, right?
Yeah.
And then we have a question from Grant. Have you been able to integrate with any physical security systems?
Physical security systems being biometrics or camera, for instance. I'll go on a hunch and say, yes, we have. So we do that. The other additions of that is, security benefits that you pick up from, for instance, tracking employees in an industrial space or things like that. So I think the question is very specific, and I'm happy to take that offline in terms of what specifically you're referring to. But from a CCTV perspective or from biometrics or from access systems, yes, definitely. Something that we developed during COVID with our rapid application development team was the concept called CoVision, and that was camera-based access based on screening of employees in environments and allowing people to go in and out of environments. So from a security perspective, yes. We also do, things that are coming to the market like smart locks, integrating into things like that. But that is a very specific piece of equipment. So it's all about the larger problem and what we're trying to solve. By no means am I saying that IoT technology improves security or diminishes the risk that are related to securities, but we do them. Yeah, we do take them on.
Right, so that's all the questions that I have from the audience. Are there any closing remarks that you have? Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave us with, Xander, before you are also off the hook?
Yeah, I think I know that this webinar was specific around mining, and I thank Alex again for coming onto here and talking with us and sharing his experience with us as a partner. But this really stems into a broader audience, right? the Internet of Things or the industrial Internet of Things is really vertical agnostic. And us as a business, we approach it that way. So I believe that there will be more webinars to come in all of our other market propositions that we take out. And yeah, if anybody has any specific questions related to industrial or not industrial, please reach out to me or Celeste or anybody, and happy to have a discussion over a cup of coffee.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Xander. You're off the hook. I just want to thank you and Alex and everyone else once again for joining us. After what we've heard today, I'm sure you will all agree with me that your strategy should dictate your technology and not the other way around. So I hope to see you at the next conversation where we will be talking about smart buildings. You could register with the QR code that's currently displayed on your screen using your smartphone, or alternatively, you can follow the link that was just posted in our Q&A chat box. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.